In a world gone mad, only rationality and common sense can save it. It's Andrew and Jerry Save the World with your hosts, Andrew Langer and Jerry Rogers. And now, here's Andrew and Jerry.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to yet another episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World, episode 8. Andrew and Jerry save Kevin McCarthy. I am Andrew Langer, and he is...
I remain Jerry Rogers, of course.
And we want to start off by making sure people understand that well, first of all, we'll get into what we're talking about with regards to Kevin McCarthy.
Kevin McCarthy, the GOP leader, the Republican minority leader in the House, California Congressman, Republican GOP leader.
Yes, and we are obviously we are interested in saving Kevin McCarthy, but this is not to condone anything in particular that Kevin McCarthy has done, nor is it to oppose anything in particular that Kevin McCarthy has done. With the exception of, actually, I should clarify, we are deeply troubled. Well, listen, we're gonna have a great show today. We're going to be joined by former member of Congress Nan McCarthy. This is really
Nan Hayworth.
Thank you, Jerry. Nan Hayworth.
You got McCarthy on the brain.
I do have McCarthy on the brain. This is a show that is going to deal with a bunch of issues. This is not an issue-specific show today. Insofar as we are going to be talking about sort of regular order and the collapse of Congress, the collapse of rationality, and the RNC censure of Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, and what's going on in Canada. We got a lot of stuff we want to talk about today, but we wanted to start with this particular story. Jerry hit me to it. Jerry, go ahead and tell us all how as we start with the Kevin McCarthy story.
Well, as we all know, the RNC, the Republican National Committee, just recently passed a resolution where they censure Reps Kinzinger. How do you say his name? Kinzinger and Cheney, and for good reason, right? Because both of these members of Congress have sided with the politics of Pelosi, the January 6th committee. And again, Andrew and I have been very upfront about this. What happened on January 6, 2021 was a political atrocity. The mob attack of the Capitol. Our founding fathers, I did a whole program dedicated to this topic on WBAL, talking about how the founding fathers feared the mob more than anything else, right?
Yes.
Also, as it was happening, I was on the air condemning what was happening, asking, where is the president? Why hasn't he spoken out forcefully? Okay, so we're on the record.
Listen, and we shouldn't have to explain it anymore.
Right, but you have to.
But because it is 2022.
In the age of Joe Rogan, you have to explain yourself over and over again.
That's exactly
regardless. Right. But however, this committee has gone against the rules of the House. It's gone rogue. It has persecuted ordinary citizens.
Let's start here for a second, and let's sort of talk about this. And let's talk about you, as you said. God, I can't believe I'm going to just repeat. I agree with everything that Jerry just said. January 6th happened. January 6th there were criminal acts committed on January 6th. And as such, that means that it rests within the purview of law enforcement, and law enforcement should be the ones that are dealing with this in a nation which is supposed to be governed by this thing called the rule of law, and is not supposed to be governed by politics. And for an incident that was driven by an extremist view of politics and extreme political action, right? I don't think I'm saying anything that you would disagree with there, Jerry.
No.
Maybe, just maybe, in order to deal with it in a rational manner, in a manner that actually moves the nation forward, maybe, just maybe, it should be dealt with outside of the political process and not used for political football.
I agree. But even still, the Congress can still investigate it as long as law enforcement. The problem is that Pelosi and the Democrats have weaponized it.
That's the thing. And that's where I was getting to, Jerry, is that the problem with this thing becoming political is that these kinds of investigations eventually become political witch hunts. And we've known people caught up in political witch hunts. I want to listen. I'll come in here and say this. Our guest, we didn't even talk about it last week. He referenced it. But David Safavian, when he came on, we didn't talk about David Safavian's story, but David Safavian got caught up in a political witch hunt. In fact, it wound up being a bipartisan political witch hunt in the end, but it was nonetheless driven by, in no small measure, it started with the axe that the late Senator John McCain had to grind with a number of people within the conservative movement, and David Safavian got caught up in it. We've known other people who've gotten caught up in it.
David ended up being convicted of, there was a hung jury the first time, a mistrial. It was all process crime. But let me just comment on this, and that is, the Andrew and Jerry save Kevin McCarthy. The media has been pushing this January 6th commission, pushing the theme of insurrection and all the rest of it, right? The big lie, all the rest of it. And recently, right, the RNC passes this resolution condemning these two members, Cheney and Kinzinger, because they are giving cover to the partisanship of the Democrats. And here's the thing. The media over the last several days has reported this resolution as legitimizing the mob attack, and that's not true.
Let me say something else, Jerry, real quick before we get into the resolution. I want to say something else about January 6th and the January 6th investigation, and why January 6th itself should be investigated.
Of course,
because I think. You and I have talked about the grift, and how movements can be destroyed by grifters. I would not be surprised to discover that certain people, and I'm not going to name them because I don't know offhand, but I would not be surprised to discover that certain people who were involved in this and who have been involved in political grifting in the past, were not paid by, I will say, foreign agents. Right? Here's the grand irony here. You have Jimmy Carter coming out, or having someone come out and talk about Jimmy Carter's comments in 2019 about the legitimacy of the 2016 presidential election. We went down this road where people thought that Donald Trump was elected because of a foreign influence in our elections. That has never been proven.
It's better than that. Yeah. It's demonstrably false.
Yes, but we know that. Well, we know that we know that the Russians interfered on both sides in the 2016
and they have been for elections forever. But the charge from Jimmy Carter, from Nancy Pelosi, from the Democrats, from the media that somehow the Russians hacked this election.
Now, wouldn't it be great to discover that the funding for some of the grifters who were involved in the organization of January 6th, wouldn't it be great to discover if some of them had received money from outside of the United States? Which is why it's important for law enforcement. And frankly, if Congress wanted to use its power to go down this road and look at it, that would be fine. But that's not what they did. Instead, what has happened is they've gone far afield and used this as a political witch hunt, as Jerry said, that's been weaponized to go after people who were not involved in January 6th, weren't involved in the events inside the Capitol, but are being brought in specifically because of the witch hunt. So, which gets us into the resolution. I'm going to pull up the resolution.
Read the resolution, and then let's play the tape of Kevin McCarthy, Leader McCarthy, being chased in the halls of Congress.
Yeah. So this is the resolution itself. And you get down to it. I'm sorry. I want to be really clear about something. I have edited it here for those of you who are listening and not watching. I took a screenshot of it essentially, and then had highlighted, circled the relevant passage that everybody's dealing with. And it says, whereas Representatives Cheney and Kinzinger are participating in a Democrat-led persecution of ordinary citizens engaged in legitimate political discourse, and they are both utilizing their past professed political affiliation to mask Democrat abuse of prosecutorial power for partisan purposes, therefore be it. And the language of this is very important. Jerry, I know you want
now
to
nowhere else in this resolution does it use the phrase or a phraseology, legitimate political discourse. This paragraph is the only place it's clear. This is a one-page document. It's very clear. My 7-year-old boy could read this and understand that what this resolution is speaking to is ongoing, current, today,
Yes.
as we speak, persecution of ordinary citizens engaged in legitimate political discourse. However, the New York Times, I think, was the first, but the Washington Post, Politico, Axios, NBC News, Morning Joe, all the rest followed with the wrong narrative, the purposeful wrong narrative, because anyone could read this thing and get the truth that the resolution legitimizes as the mob attack.
Yes.
That this resolution says that it legitimizes 1-6 mob as legitimate political discourse. Because it does nothing of the sort.
Because either way, it would have said who were engaging in or who had engaged in
are participating. I mean, again, you don't need to be
or had participated in, but this is all, as you said, the present tense. It's things that both, because when you first said it, Jerry, you were first talking about what Kinzinger and Cheney are doing, and that's
Correct.
part of it.
Right.
But also the resolution talks about what the legitimate political discourse that is currently going on, not talking specifically about
Right.
January 6th.
And here's the thing. We could lay out for you a list of the citizens being their rights being abused by this partisan committee. However, here's my suggestion.
Yeah.
Don't take my word for it or Andrew's word for it. Go pick up someone like Molly Hemingway, who has reported on this, and go and look at what this rogue committee, frankly, this committee, because of the way it was organized, it failed to come under House rules. Right. Really has no subpoena power. Yet they are subpoena. They do subpoenas. This committee has required that the President of the United States submit notes on conversations. And again, how dangerous that is, and how partisan Joe Biden is. Every president has said, no, there's a privilege here. Yeah. And the courts and the Biden administration, the political establishment, the media have all said, it's Trump. Who cares? Well, you know what? The next time, right? The next president or president 100 years from now, why would I want to give advice to the president if his notes, if this confidential advice can be made public sometime later out of context? Yeah. No woman, no man in their right mind is going to want to serve the president.
Again, it gets down to the concept of the best lack all conviction while the worst are filled with passion.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, so now, if you don't mind, Andrew, play this clip, because here's my take on this. Andrew, I keep on saying Andrew McCarthy. And I know what Andrew McCarthy.
Listen, I said, well, we both do, and I said Nan McCarthy. So yeah,
but Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the GOP in the House, he's running away from this reporter who is promoting this false narrative. The leader, Mr. McCarthy, should have simply stopped and corrected her. And all you got to do is read the resolution. I'm sorry. Right. Go ahead.
So here we go.
You know what? Make it an appointment in office and come on all the time, okay? It's not good to do interviews. You know what? Make it an
all right, it's the same thing over and over again.
Okay? But essentially what she's saying is, she's saying to the leader, she's saying, can you comment here? You just had it, but can you comment on the resolution that says the mob attack was legitimate political discourse?
Yeah.
Well, and all he had to do was stop and simply say, oh my goodness, you have this wrong. It does no such thing. Please read. In fact, come into my office and we can read it together.
We can read it together. We can actually have a conversation about this. I'm going to play you what it was. My immediate reaction was that it reminded me of this scene from A Bronx Tale.
Kennedys.
All right.
But again, A Bronx Tale, this character, the main character gets off the bus. His father's a bus driver. Sonny is there, and he's the local wise guy. Sonny's the wise guy. Anyway, long story short, this guy owes him $20. He's running away. It's kind of funny. Kevin McCarthy running away from this reporter. This is why we said Andrew Jerry saving Kevin McCarthy, because this is the problem with Republicans. There's an opportunity here in real time to correct the false narrative that this resolution somehow legitimizes the mob attack. It does not.
Jerry, I'm going to play this again, and I just want you to imagine that the reporter's asking him, "Where's my money?"
Yeah, where's my money?
Where's my money? Louis, where's my money? Louis,
now, hey, listen, for our audience.
See, what are you doing?
You should go back and see that scene. Now, the guy who's running away, I got to go see my grandmother. That guy's name is Massimiliano Ginovino.
That's the guy, not the guy who played C.
No. The other guy.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Massimiliano Ginovino. And I taught him. He was in my class, a senior at Iona Prep. And again, the leather jacket he was wearing was the same leather jacket when he came into my class. I'd be like, "Hey, Max, take that jacket off. It's not.
You'd say, Max, take that jacket off and give me my $20.
Oh my goodness.
Where's my effing money?
Oh my goodness. But anyway, so Massimiliano Ginovino lived on Arthur Avenue. His real father owned a pizza shop right there on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx. And again, part of this was Chaz Palmieri. I say his name.
Chaz Palmieri.
He's from
Palminteri.
I'm sorry. It's one of those days.
Yes.
Anyway, but he is from Arthur Avenue. That's his neighborhood. And he went out and got guys from the neighborhood to play in it. So Chaz. Anyway, so the bottom line is this. You can't let these false narratives. You and I used to talk about this all the time.
Of course.
What is the best way to combat a lie? It's with the truth.
Of course.
And so, and again, Morning Joe, all the cable shows, CNN, MSNBC, are having these shows saying that Mitch McConnell, he is showing political leadership because, well, again, the resolution doesn't say what you say it says.
Yes.
And I don't understand why no one has, besides Jerry Rogers and Andrew Langer, why no one has pushed back.
Well, and that's just it, right?
Where's the RNC statement?
Hold on, they are pushing, but I don't know about the RNC.
I haven't seen nothing.
No. I don't know about the RNC, right? And I suspect that the RNC is ascribing to the concept that if you have to explain, you're losing. That if they have to respond to it, that means that they're losing.
Has that worked out for us,
dude? But that's
allowing the false
narrative. Again, in this situation, you're damned if you're doing, you're damned.
I don't know. You know what? I no longer ascribe to that cliched advice, that platitude. If you're explaining, you're losing.
We'll tell you what.
Bullshit. You got to explain. You have to explain, because the left.
Maybe we should have called this Andrew and Jerry Save Cursing.
I'm sorry, but
this is not a Geraldine friendly show today.
But the bottom line is you got to tell the truth.
We'll tell you what. We're gonna ask I have a sneaking suspicion that our guest is going to agree with you on this, Jerry.
Chaz Palminteri, you're right.
Yes.
My brother from the Bronx, and I messed up his name.
It's all right. It
I'm so upset.
Speaking of which, I can say this at the end of the show. Speaking of brothers from the Bronx, my aunt Fran, her birthday was yesterday, Jerry. She turned 94.
God bless her.
Yes.
Speaking 94. We got to do this. Speaking of Fran's, I told you this already, but for our audience, if you want to understand New York,
no, get to that at the end. I pulled the clip.
All right.
My point is, I have a
awesome, by the way.
I have a sneaking suspicion that our guest is going to agree with you on this. Let's switch over now, Jerry.
Got it.
To our segment that we call Expert Advice.
Expert Advice.
Well, I've wanted to have this guest on for quite a long time now, long since before we were even talking about doing the podcast. I loved having her on my old show. I think, Jerry, you've had her on as well.
Yes, of course.
Joining us for our expert advice segment is former Congresswoman from the great state of New York, Dr. Nan Hayworth. Nan, so glad you could join us today.
Well, I am absolutely honored, and this is very exciting. And to speak with two of the people whom I find truly compelling, thoughtful.
Thank you.
Just my hope is that your fame will grow and grow. So,
well, listen, we're gonna talk about. We're going to talk about Joe Rogan and Spotify. We are sticking with Spotify. We're going to talk about him, and we don't want you to comment on it quite yet, but we are sticking with Spotify. We're on Rumble already, so it's all good there. But Nan, we were just talking about Kevin McCarthy. We played this video of McCarthy running down the hallway of the Capitol in response to this story, which we think is yet another of these big lies. This attempt to paint the RNC resolution, the censuring resolution of Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, the attempt to paint that as somehow legitimizing January 6th.
Right.
Let's start with that. Why hasn't there been a greater pushback on that false narrative?
It's a disappointment that there hasn't been. I've been pushing back on it because I served in the House as a freshman with Adam Kinzinger. He was a solid conservative. He was a team player, as far as I can tell. He was a rising star, to be sure. I was distinctly disappointed when he and Representative Cheney agreed to take these so-called Republican places on the January 6th committee, which I consider to be a complete sham. The problem is not that someone would be troubled by, let's take it to the 30,000 foot level. All of us should be troubled by what happened at the Capitol on January 6th, 2021. But all of us should be asking every question that we can about the facts of the case.
Yes.
January 6th committee, as constituted by Nancy Pelosi and the House Democrats, has no such intention. It is strictly a kangaroo court, a star chamber, a sham, a fraud, call it what you will. And the fact that Cheney and Kinzinger legitimize this fraud disgusts me. And I don't blame the RNC for censuring them, because they should not receive the support of the Republican National Committee, in my humble opinion. And I'm not, I don't like internecine battles. I especially don't like internecine battles that are dragged into the public sphere. But Cheney and Kinzinger chose to do this.
Yeah, it gets into this real question. So Jerry and I were talking about this, about the nature of a fishing expedition.
Yeah.
And we've seen this before, this idea that, well, actually, let me pull it back a little bit. And I know you're not a lawyer, you're a physician,
right.
but to my view, the problem with the January 6th commission, and we can talk about how it's improperly constituted.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There is the legal aspect of this. And there were laws that were broken. I think we can all agree on this, that there were laws that were broken, and that is the purview of law enforcement. Congress obviously has its investigatory power, but the problem is with a case that is essentially founded on extreme politics and an extreme way of engaging in politics.
Right.
Engaging in more extreme politics is not the right answer. What are your thoughts here?
Well, Andrew, that's an exceedingly, and I compliment you, an exceedingly thoughtful and diplomatic way of putting it.
I used a curse word earlier to describe it.
Yes.
By the way, I never ever curse on the podcast. My mom listens, and so I think it's the first time ever, Andrew, I used a bad word.
Sure.
I apologize. I'm sorry, Nan. I'm sorry.
Not at all.
Here.
No, not at all. I engage in profanity frequently, including online, because I'm 62 and I can do what I like. But,
I love it. Yes.
and I ain't running for anything and never will again.
Oh, that's so
I've been
good.
liberated. So
Like, God forbid we speak our mind, right?
well, yes. And we all do run the risk
Right.
of running afoul of the rapidly evolving. And hey, you got to give free enterprise credit. It does everything better than communism. So our social credit system under our free enterprise system is evolving apace. We're going to do it better and faster than the Communist Party in China because we're Americans. Yeah, no, I mean, dead serious. I mean, this is it, once you get, like, there are so many threats to our liberties, but so-called woke corporatism, woke capitalism is perhaps the most urgent one. We can talk all about that, but back to the January 6th committee for a moment. Much was wrong about January 6th.
Of course.
No one who entered the Capitol without permission should have been there.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I agree. But anyone looking at even the most easily accessed public information should have serious questions about how this all happened. Darren Beatty at Revolver News has done yeoman work, as you know, in documenting using the publicly available surveillance, if you will, people with their own cell phone cameras, right? Because for whatever reason, Speaker Pelosi and the Capitol Police will not allow the release of the surveillance videos that the public actually owns. That's public property, as far as I know. Why can't we see the surveillance videos from inside the Capitol? Why?
And more to the point, right? If it tells the story that this commission thinks that it tells,
right,
all the more reason to release it.
But
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
But they're not doing that. And you know, why was Ray Epps not, why is he not incarcerated? My God, he was telling people they needed to go in and breach the Capitol. Yeah. He was talking with the people who were calmly opening the barricades, again, in eyewitness videos. Who was the scaffold commander? Right. Sitting up on the scaffolding with a megaphone telling people, move in, move in, move in. Why was John Sullivan within but a couple of feet, if I'm recalling correctly, of Ashley Babbitt when she was shot?
Yeah, these are all important. But also right, Nan, I mean, I think it's important to know if we're going down, this is why law enforcement is so vital in all of this. I would think we would want to know if, in point of fact, you and I both know, the three of us all know that there are folks who engage in the political grift, right? They create causes simply to separate gullible people from their money.
Yes.
And we know that there were some of those folks who were involved in organizing the rally. I'm not going to name specific names.
Right.
And wouldn't it be nice to know if some of them were being paid by foreign governments, right? So all of these things, right? As we talk about who is directing this, and again, right? I mean, I don't want to go down the road and say, well, you know, these are you know, Democrat provocateurs, or these are FBI provocateurs. But I would like to know. If there was Chinese or Russian money that was being used to, because this is where we are right now. This is exactly what the Russians and the Chinese want, isn't it?
And this is the challenge too, because Andrew was saying earlier today that if we're explaining, we're losing. And to be honest,
that's an important question. Thank you.
And to be honest with you, and Nan, I'll ask you this. I think we're at a point now where our silence. We just let the false narratives take hold. I remember, just real quick, during the George W. Bush administration, I was at the Manhattan Institute, and we were very frustrated that the president wasn't doing a better job of defending his policies, his anti-terror policies.
Agreed. Yeah.
And later on, we find out the president thought it was unpresidential. He thought that it wasn't, the truth is the truth. He wasn't going to explain himself. And I think we've learned since then that if we're not pushing back, if we're not telling the truth, then these false narratives take
with that in mind, right? Because I just said to Jerry before you came on, because he asked the question, why hasn't the RNC corrected the record and made it really clear? So, well, maybe the RNC thinks that if they have to explain what their resolution says, it means they're losing. Where do you come down in all of this?
Well, a couple of thoughts on that.
Yep.
One is, having been obviously in active political life for several years, I've heard arguments on both sides of those sorts of issues, and there is a certain amount of, there's an art and a science to knowing when you want to give something oxygen and when you don't.
Right.
But in this case, I think my role model and look, I've been a Trump supporter. I have no regrets. I am very proud of what I did to support.
Wait, Nan, are you saying that we're not better off with Joe Biden? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know. I may be making news today. Making news with that. Yeah, Hayworth, not fan of Biden. Yeah, for those who've never met me and never read anything of mine on Twitter, but and there are such people. Lucky them. But my model for I adored President Trump in many ways. But I did feel that his stream of consciousness did render him more vulnerable to his critics. I love the shoes. That's a real picture.
I pulled up, for those of you listening, I pulled up Nan's Twitter feed for the.
I have to interrupt for a second because you put the shoes up. Now, Nan, you may or may not remember, but years ago, my brother and I, my brother Timothy Rogers, we were working with the Independent Women's Forum. And they honored you that year. And my brother just fell in love with you. But mostly it was because of your fashion, the shoes. And so Timothy's now working again. This is a personal, but Timothy's now he's at the Chamber of Commerce in South Carolina. But I can't wait. But he'll watch this, and so Tim just thought you were fantastic. Your fashion was fantastic. Anyway, I'm sorry.
I do like shoes. I will say.
Sorry, Andrew. I had to do that.
Sorry, no. But then you were saying.
That picture was taken by a photographer, I think, in the Hill. I did not set up that page. My buddy who did put the shoe picture in. It was presented that way in the Hill because, pretty in pink, because my shoes were distinct contrast to the black Oxfords. Everybody else was wearing the black. Sure. But anyway, but what I was going to say is President Trump's absolute stream of consciousness. He was barraged relentlessly with criticisms, with attacks, with the Biden and the Obama rather DOJ and FBI doing dastardly things against him. All that is fair and true, but I do think there are ways that if I could have taken a little molecular screwdriver and just tweaked some of the things he said, I think he could have had more forcefulness, more potency, without losing any of his. You're right. His staunch supporters. And my model for that is Ron DeSantis.
Yes. Andrew and I used to watch the pressers, the Donald Trump pressers. We'd have to for our radio shows, WBAL.
Right,
and we'd be texting each other, stop now. Just stop now. Stop. Just
Walk
stop.
away.
You did it. Walk away. Stop now. But you're right, and you're absolutely right about the governor.
Yeah. No, Ron DeSantis does not let things just drop. He takes things on, he takes them by the horns, and he exudes confidence born of intellect and competence. He is able to deliver the goods.
Yep.
And he won't put up with any nonsense.
Yep.
And he does it exactly right.
I'm watching this. I binge watched it. The Jack Reacher.
How is it?
It's excellent.
Oh, I want to watch it so badly. Okay.
Excellent. It's so good. I'm going to use it to make a point on the Andrew and Jerry Save the World.
Okay, good.
And that is this. I like the immediate justice. There's a bad thing that happens, and Jack Reacher, and very like the governor, very simply and quickly just stops it.
Yeah.
Right.
He just does it with great force. And that's a great juxtaposition. President Trump and the governor, because we can make a point and then move on.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So now, thank you, Jerry, for that, because now that 1883 is almost coming to a close,
dude, I'm
and
giving you all kinds of binge.
Yes, we're
Pretend it's a city. Jack Reacher. Go back and rewatch Quantum Leap. You'll be fine.
Yes, that Jerry's big thing is everybody should go back and watch Quantum Leap, especially because they're going to reboot it. Let's shift gears for a minute.
I never saw it the first time. I'm sorry.
Oh, you got to go back and watch it. The
it.
First three seasons, especially, or seasons 1 and 2 and 4, apparently, according to Jerry, because season 3 takes a dive.
Yeah.
Let me shift gears though, and ask you this, because it's been in the news this week. This schism between President Trump and Vice President Pence over what Pence should have done. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, listen, I say this of Pence for many years. I don't even know if you know this, Nan, but Pence's subcommittee on small business was the first committee that I testified before in Congress in the early 2000s. So I've been a fan of his since way back when.
Yeah, I was always a fan.
And I used to, in fact, it's funny. I just said this to somebody.
And Andrew, I remember that testimony. It was great stuff.
Hey, listen, it was the greatest testimony ever given before.
Yes, it was.
Jerry, listen. But it's funny because I used to drive.
So what shoes were you wearing, Andrew?
Oh, yes.
They were in fact, they were pink. Not as high a heel as yours.
Oh, there you go.
And I used to drive friends of ours who did a political poll, a presidential poll, crazy, because I always insisted on having Mike Pence included in the poll. And they said, Andrew, Mike Pence is never going to be, anything, blah, blah. So what are your thoughts on this? Because this is interesting to me, this split. And to me, it's the difference between what Mike Pence thought he could do politically and what he could do legally.
Right. A few thoughts. I've always defended Vice President Pence.
Yeah.
And I love President Trump, but Vice President Pence did the right thing.
Of course.
That was the legal process in our election process. I have not been designed to address, right?
Go ahead, keep going.
Now, the situation such as we saw in 2020,
there
were, I think it's fair to say that there are certainly folks who contend that the legal process could have been handled more effectively in certain respects. It was too chaotic. Perhaps. I'm not an attorney, and I was not involved in anything other than, speaking out and, supporting the questions that I think were rightly asked about the way in which that election was prosecuted. And there are indeed lasting and profound implications for the way in which we pursue elections. And
Pennsylvania is a prime example of this.
Pennsylvania and indeed, Raffensperger in Georgia is, going after potential sources of fraud. You've seen it in Arizona, you've seen it in Wisconsin.
The mainstream media admitted after the fact about how they fortified the election.
Oh, absolutely.
Andrew and I talked about this too many times, Andrew, but where Andrew and I have come down, I don't want to speak for you, Andrew, but is that there was a lot of work to be done prior to the election that for some reason the Trump campaign and didn't engage in it.
And this is what I want to ask Nan about this. I want to ask Nan about this, Jerry. I'm going to interrupt you here.
Sure.
Nan, do you think, and I know you're not a lawyer, but you know political lawyers. There are a great many really good political lawyers.
Yeah.
What do you think the impact was? Actually, I'm going to speculate. I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah.
Were too many of the good, competent, exceptional political lawyers on the conservative side bullied from assisting Donald Trump?
I'm sorry,
that's a tough question. You may not be.
No, it's, I don't have enough personal knowledge
Okay.
of what went on to say that particularly. However,
Well, by the way, I'm not saying bullied by Donald Trump. I'm saying
no,
bullied
no,
by the
I'm
leftist
not
press.
either.
Yeah.
No, but I do definitely have that sense that there were a lot of much lower key, highly competent people who were sidelined by particularly the whole Lynn Wood thing to me.
Yeah.
I mean, if anybody seems like a false flag, it's Lynn Wood in Georgia. Right?
Yeah, I have.
Yes.
Listen, I will say this again, not mentioning names, but there are several that come to mind. Lawyers who are claim competence that they simply do not have.
Right. No.
Yeah.
Right. And we all know. I mean, Lynn Wood, obviously, for Covington. Blanking on that nice young man's name right now, but he. I was glad that that young man had a psychotic bulldog like Lynn Wood on his side, but I don't know how else to say it. But Robert Barnes, I would listen to Robert Barnes, and he warned about the lawfare into which Powell, Sidney Powell in particular, who again has seemed impressive in many respects.
Yes.
But is that she was really with her the particular way she was going after Dominion, that was going to be a problem. So there was there were a lot of moving parts. Jerry, apropos of what you said about the media admitting they facilitated
fortified the election, right?
Fortified the election, exactly, which is a term they use. The media, Mark Zuckerberg,
yes,
all of the the right-minded corporate types,
our betters, all our betters,
the U.S. Chamber of Commerce,
yes,
right, and I hope they're happy with what they got. Those SOBs. Forgive me, because that really just grinds my gears.
Listen.
But it was essentially, I mean, it was brazen, it was breathtaking to me that basically, these are the bank robbers after the robbery bragging about how they did it.
Look, what I've always said in WBAL on the radio show.
This is how much they think we're on the side of the right.
Yeah. The fix was in. It was in a way though that the former president, did not articulate.
Yes,
and that's part of the. And to your point, Andrew, there was the major law firm that was representing the Trump campaign in Pennsylvania dropped out.
Yeah.
Because of political pressure, just days after the election, and we know what happened in Pennsylvania. So,
our good friend Cleta Mitchell is no longer practicing law because she was being hounded by. Yeah, I mean, this is insane. And it harkens. It's interesting because it harkens back. Not to change topics, but it harkens back to some of our friends in the science community who voice skepticism over man-made climate change. Who have been drummed from and harassed.
We already have a social credit system here.
Yes,
we absolutely have it.
So talk about that because this is exactly, somebody was talking about China and the kind of authoritarian views that we have. And somebody I was reading and said we were already there.
The cultural revolution has come to America.
Yeah, but go ahead, Nan, please talk about that.
And we've done it ourselves. So I grew up in Northwest Indiana, went to public high school, wonderful public high school, Munster High School. I talk about my teachers and, my parents. I was blessed to have incredible parents. And I was recruited to attend Princeton University. I cherished every day I was there. I loved my alma mater. I was a very active alumna. There's a reason I'm saying this. And, I did extremely well there. I was a science person, obviously a biology major. But it's been fascinating in the decades since graduation to observe. My then future husband and I were the only two people we knew who voted for President Reagan in 1980. And I'm very proud of that vote, was proud of it at the time. I've always been a Republican my whole life, but, not because I just, follow what my parents were and they were thoughtful Republicans, but because it always made sense to me, just if you have to align with a party, that party directionally is the better one. So what I observed over time was that, especially living in Metro New York, being a doctor, you're in that bubble, you're in that educated suburbanite bubble. I call them the bien pensant. they're the right thinking people. Right.
Sure.
And they crank us out of these elite institutions. And I observed it among it, I especially became attuned to it when I entered politics and started, broadening my horizons in New York and returning to my Midwestern roots in a lot of ways in certain parts of the district I served. It was wonderful.
Yes.
And I've always been, a fan of micro dirty jobs. I always told my kids, we respect and revere the trades, whatever you guys want to do in life, it's all great by me. And I certainly know families like, oh, you have to be a doctor or a lawyer, blah, 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 so that bubble, that highly educated suburbanite bubble, that Ivy League crowd, the top universities are grinding out these people, cranking them out. And they're all imbued with this sense that I have unique gifts and knowledge to change the world. I'm going to change the world through policy. Sure. Right? Yeah. I'm going to do it through policy. So having, they're the goo-goos, the good government types, the more we do through government, the better. And if my industry has a cozy relationship with the government, well, that's all okay because we're all doing the right thing.
Yes. Love
These
it.
are the people who are bringing us down today.
Yes. Agreed. Wholeheartedly. Sorry, Jerry, go ahead.
Langer and I had an old boss at the Competitive Enterprise Institute, a guy named Fred Smith, and Fred would make this very point. He would say that the problem with capitalism is that it creates wealth, and wealth creates those who are intellectuals who don't engage in a trade. They're not building something, so therefore they have all this education and expertise. So therefore they feel entitled to rule you, and they know better than you.
Exactly.
And that's part of the problem. That's part of the challenges of a free enterprise system. We create this intellectual class, and again, we talk about this all the time. The hypocrisy, right? It's not hypocrisy, it's hierarchy. They don't think the rules that apply to us should even apply to them. Which is why you see a Stacey Abrams with no mask on in a classroom with children and teachers all with masks on.
And Eric Adams in New York saying everybody has to eat a vegan meal when he admits that he eats fish. I mean, all of these things go in.
And you're so right. It's the complacency. It's the hubris.
Yes.
We witnessed the apotheosis of the laptop class.
I love that.
And there is a category of people who want to be ruled over. Before we get to that, and I want to talk about Joe Rogan, Nan, I actually, because of where you lived in Westchester, I need to ask you this question. You need to help settle a debate between me
please.
Me and Jerry. I'm going to ask her.
I hope I can.
Nan Hayworth, where does upstate New York begin?
Before you answer, though, understand that I'm from the Bronx.
Right.
And Andrew kind of grew up in Westchester.
I did grow up in Westchester.
All right, very good.
Yes. But Jerry's opinion is
Yonkers.
That upstate begins at Yonkers, at McLean Avenue on the major
McLean Avenue. You cross over McLean Avenue.
Yeah. You're upstate.
You're in Yonkers.
Yeah. I'll make it easy for you. Upstate is any place north and west of where I live.
Okay, there you go. All right, because I say it's north of Dutchess County. Dutchess County. I say it's north of Dutchess County.
I love upstate. I'm an upstater. Yes, so I'm with you, Jerry. I kind of define upstate as I'll go.
Well, here's the thing.
I'll go past Westchester. I would say that's upstate.
Okay. Well, I have family that moved from the Bronx that to this day live up in Geneva, New York.
Yeah.
And in fact, my family owns the big House of Guitars in Geneva.
Oh, wow.
But so I get, Andrew, I understand what upstate is. I know.
Right? I just wanted to ask.
But there was a point, and again, Fran Lebowitz in this show, Pretend It's a City, gets to this. If you grew up in New York at a certain time, you really did have this hubris that everything started, everything that mattered, everything that was important was on your block in your neighborhood. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. By the way, if I may recommend,
please,
viewing, this is a classic from the turn of the 21st century. Rick Burns, I think it was, did it. New York, a documentary.
Okay, very good.
It is. fantastic.
See, I recommend. I love the documentary NY-77, the coolest year in hell.
Yes.
Which is
Well, everybody
right.
knows that was the best year to graduate from Munster High School.
There you go. That's
But
that right.
But what I find, I have watched that series of 8 episodes over and over again, because I love New York and I find it fascinating. It is a microcosm of the United States in so many ways. I'm the daughter of an immigrant. My mother came to the United States from England, not via Ellis Island. She took the Queen Mary, and she was a remarkable young woman. She booked passage herself, and she had her own job waiting and so on. But there are so many. It's got a lefty and definitely it's a New York chauvinistic angle. But I will say that I think the Tammany model that took hold in the city of New York, in particular, in the mid-19th century, was the model for political patronage.
Yes.
And for the government, for political organizations being the intercessors between downtrodden citizens and power structures.
Yeah.
And it influences New York politics to this day. And I think it had an effect on national politics. And by the way, I think the New Deal was designed in large measure, if you think about it, to enrich New York City.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. It really does.
I mean, FDR was a New Yorker.
Yes.
He was surrounded by, socialists who thought that, the Soviet model would be a great thing. And New York City was the perfect place to give it a try. Look how much they poured into New York.
Oh, yeah.
In projects.
Without a doubt.
It's
and also, and to your point too, how these projects, these do good, right? Good government projects displace neighborhoods. So what, you own a shop here? So what that my father to this day will point out from the Cross Bronx Expressway where his building was when he was a baby in 1939, 1940, and he still says they literally threw us out of the neighborhood. Yeah.
Right. No, the Robert Moses, fascinating,
towering
character. But the idea being that New York was also a place in which those who survived, many of them survived on their brains.
Oh, yeah.
So, the whole idea of intellectualism being, the way in which we, and I'm an intellectual person with an intellectual bent myself, but that's the way we elevate ourselves. We look to figures of authority because they know we can trust them. They will save us. When FDR said freedom from want and freedom from fear, right? Those were not enumerated in the Constitution for a reason, because government is not meant to be the provider of our livelihoods or the guarantor of our livelihoods. That idea was lost along the way, starting for real in the 1930s.
This is actually a really good segue as we talk about sort of this trust in authority and trust in authoritarians. Before we started the segment, and we were just sort of talking, we were talking about Joe Rogan and Spotify, and I was talking about how there seems to be this transformation. There seems to be a transformation in terms of how the hippies of the 60s view the world. And I said, as I've said before, that they wanted to replace what they viewed as a corrupt authoritarian regime with a benign authoritarian regime of their own. And of course, the problem is that authoritarianism is authoritarianism. Totally. But you just had a conversation with somebody about the Joe Rogan situation, and we wanted to hear that.
I did?
Yeah, you did. You just weren't you? Did you say you were talking to somebody about Joe Rogan or Neil Young? You were talking about Neil Young with somebody.
Well, I mean, I've certainly opined on Neil
Yes,
Young.
please.
Yes. No, I'm sorry. It was not apropos of Young or Rogan. It was a little bit before those controversies. Sorry.
Okay.
But, yes, I know to what you're referring, Andrew. Yes, I have a dear friend who's tends very much toward the left, and has embraced all of the authoritarian measures that have been imposed on us during COVID. And I said to him, you spent the 60s and 70s questioning authority. Now he's a physician, so he's been an authority figure himself for decades now. So you spent the 60s and 70s questioning authority, protesting Vietnam and, you name it. Why do you not question authority now? And he didn't have an answer for me.
Interesting.
It was thought-provoking for him.
The answer could be this simple, and that is, we just went through this Whoopi Goldberg situation and the Holocaust ignorance. Yep. And many people came to her defense saying that, we know her heart. We know she's not prejudiced. We know she's not an anti-Semite. We know Whoopi's heart. And so therefore we can't cancel her.
And hold on, Jerry, and let us be clear. Both Jerry and I thought that suspending her was dumb, but go ahead.
I don't think we should cancel Whoopi Goldberg. But however, she gets a pass because the elite,
they know her heart. Yeah.
They know her heart. And the same thing here. How could you be against that government intrusion, but in favor of that? Well, because my heart, I understand their heart. They're trying to do the best thing. It goes back to years and years ago. When Phil Gramm first, that's how old I am, when Phil Gramm went into the Senate, and he was on some program with a education expert, and she was talking about what we need to do for children in schools and this and that. And he said to her, you think you know better than their parents? And she said, yes, of course I do. I have these degrees and everything else. And he said, well, you think you know better for my children? Well, when it comes to education policy, of course I do. And he said to her, what are their names? And of course, there's no answer. And that's the problem with the authoritarian left. They know theory, they know what they know, but they don't understand community and hard work and entrepreneurship and startup firms and what it takes. Churches, what C.S. Lewis calls the little platoons.
And I don't remember, this thought didn't originate in my head, and I wish I could give proper credit where due, but
I just take credit for those things now. It's all right. You can take credit for it.
It originated entirely. Brilliant mind. I have trouble keeping track of all my, no, but I got to patent these things, but a couple of years ago, I started making the point, emphasizing the point, that the defining quality of government is that it can use force against the citizens, up to and including lethal force. It can do violence against us. Yes. That is what defines government. And I was with an audience of, again, right thinking, prosperous, successful, so they had the evidence. So don't forget, these people succeed, and then they have the evidence to validate their high impression of themselves, right? But we were speaking about politics. We were having an interesting discussion, and when I made that point to them, because these are people who believe in good government, right? I'm not even sure we should. I mean, there is such thing as good government, but I think most people, when they think of good government, they think of benevolent authoritarianism. So I was making this point to them, and I made the point about violence. And as that's the framers brilliantly limited the power of the federal government, because government can compel us to pay for the mistakes of those who govern, and they have lethal force if they choose to use it. And I said, look what they did to Roger Stone. That was not a criminal complaint against him. And they came to his door with, arms ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, we see it all the time. I mean, this isn't an American example of this, but in the headlines today and yesterday, this 78-year-old 5'0" Canadian great grandfather, he honks his horn in support of these truckers, and they essentially beat him and arrested him.
Yeah.
That's what the government does. That's what the police do.
Right, exactly. So we have an opportunity right now, but that's the point I make. Look, we all want good things to happen.
Sure.
And how do you make it happen best? But when I said that about government and about the government can use violence, up to and including lethal force against you, it got them thinking. They were sort of like, because it's the truth.
Well, this is what Jerry and I talk about with regards to these issues of so-called police brutality, the examples that led to so much turmoil and have led to so much turmoil in America. Right. Jerry and I talked quite a bit about the Eric Garner situation up in New York.
Which
the reality is, right, if there wasn't a law against selling loosey cigarettes, then sorry, Jerry.
And with Mr. Garner, it appalls me because the police officers are held accountable, the arresting officer, all of this, right? There's investigations, and that should happen. But the reason why those officers were there was because the New York City Council had passed laws, but also were asking questions. Why is that, and specifically that corner, that man, why aren't we arresting these people? And the fact of the matter is that Eric Garner died because of the overreach of the New York City Council.
Absolutely.
That's why that's why he died.
Absolutely. But these politicians always manage to distance themselves from the muscle.
Yeah.
They don't look when we
Nan, listen, we've taken up a lot of your time.
Oh, sorry.
We'll do it again.
We've got to get you back here. You're doing a lot of work with our friends at the Independent Women's Forum. Tell us a little bit about that before I let you go.
Oh, the Independent Women's Forum is for all of us who care about the dignity and the autonomy of the individual to determine her course or his course in life. And we have taken on the folks who seek to impose ever more authoritarian measures on us. Certainly we have, as you know, we have fellows and we have a wonderful team. We have a president, Carrie Lucas, who has is not only an author, but has been certainly eloquent and compelling about the wrongness of mask mandates, for example. Those
well, she's I call Carrie super mom. She's just fantastic.
And that she is. But it's we supported not only Amy Coney Barrett, but also Brett Kavanaugh. We were the voices who insist that all issues must be framed in terms of the best interests of all involved, and according to the wisdom of our Constitution, that so brilliantly delineated the powers of the federal government and separated and limited those versus those of the states and the citizens. And we're also involved in advocacy for women in specific in these very challenging times regarding, for example, participation in sports. How do we manage
a topic we didn't even get to, which is critical. I have 5 kids, 4 daughters. Yeah. And my second daughter is an athlete, was the best athlete in her co-ed Catholic high school. And even today, she's one of the best 400 sprinters in the NCAA. And this issue of women being able to compete in sports is something that we need to talk out more. I apologize, Andrew. Just yesterday, or in the news today, Adele, the singer Adele.
Yes.
She received this award.
Yeah.
It was a gender neutral Artist of the Year award that was purposefully, because of these issues, male artist, female artist, they combined it. And she had the audacity to say that she's proud of what women have done in the arts. And she's proud of being a woman and being a woman artist. And you know that Adele, who I don't know her politics one way or the other, is being vilified today because she had the audacity to say that I'm proud to be a woman and I'm proud of women in the arts. I mean, this is I mean, my technical term is that we're bordering on insanity here.
Right. No, it's
Yes.
insanity on stilts.
Yeah.
And as we have to kind of bring things full circle in a sense, it is our prosperity
Yeah.
that we no longer for the moment, we certainly the last good couple of generations of Americans have not had to worry where our next meal is coming from. Will we keep a roof over our heads? I once I bought probably 30 years ago in the White House gift shop, a slim volume of one-page biographies of the first ladies of the United States. And that little book had a profound influence on just my perspective of history. Those stories, up to virtually, basically Rosalind Carter, Jimmy Carter, obviously president of the 70s, were chronicles of sorrow and loss and hardship. Yeah. And these first ladies were obviously among the most eminent in the land, if not the most eminent, right? And because modern technology, science advances, breathtaking, occurring at ever accelerating speed, have enabled us to do things and to prosper in ways we couldn't before. But human nature has not changed.
No, you're right.
Human nature has not changed. So here we are. Sadly, so many human beings unable to have proportion and perspective. And be able to, they, especially in these little social media bubbles they get into, unable to imagine what the concerns of others might be in the mix here. It's fascinating.
And again, we could go on and on, but this is my last thing I'm going to say, Andrew.
Okay, no worries, Jerry.
So I was I'm an editor at Real Clear, so therefore
I love Real Clear. I'm a supporter.
I love it too, and it forces me to read everything. I'm up at 4:30 in the morning just reading.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I hit on earlier this morning was one of the morning television hosts, co-hosts. He's an African American man, and he's married to a white woman who's also a sports reporter. Yeah. And he was talking about how difficult it is for him to talk to his biracial children about how someone who looked like mommy could have discriminated against or even owned someone who looked like daddy. And I thought to myself, really?
Right.
Why not tell them of the civil rights triumph? Why not tell them of the slaves who escaped and fought? Why not? Why aren't we talking about this history as we're triumphing? The most horrid things we overcame, and in the civil rights movement, I've often said this: if we were going to add someone to the Mount Rushmore, you put MLK there, right? And I think should be considered, again, faults and all, a founding father. But however, instead of focusing on that, how we really triumphed, he's trying to find something, woe is me, and that's wealth. He's so wealthy, he has to create problems.
You're absolutely right.
Here.
And I have to say, our current despair really started with Barack and Michelle Obama.
Yes.
The current cycle, this mood, and forgive me, but
go ahead.
Mrs. Obama has frequently opined about, and she's a woman with many talents and certainly many accomplishments, but she has frequently opined about she basically tends to have a very doer attitude. Everything's negative, everything's a disappointment. In public discourse, she has said she's mildly depressed. She's a carrier as well. I mean, she's certainly depresses me. But I think, I feel as though she was kind of Lady Macbeth to her husband. It was sort of like, well, here we are. When in a moment when, and then President Obama did certainly make some, I did not vote for him. I voted for John McCain. Forgive me.
Well, listen, I was a John McCain elector.
No, to make your point.
But I didn't vote for him, but I wished him well. I wish every president well. If they do well, we do well, and it's all because of policy, basically. But I thought, well, I hope he does well. But if he does what he's proposing, it won't go well, which it didn't. But he made some rhetorical gestures of unity, but then very quickly descended into, with the police in, Lewis Gate,
the beer summit,
which sounded completely contrived and strange, but whatever it was, and then, obviously Trayvon Martin, just starting to personalize everything and basically saying, instead of saying, look, I am president now, let's get post-racial. It's time to be post-racial. Okay.
And he could have done it.
Instead, he said, I am president now. And despite the fact that I am president, guess what, America, you still suck.
Yeah. And the thing is, he could have done it.
Nan, and you're right, we're going through this, right? We just had an election in which more Americans than ever voted, and yet apparently our elections are fraud but when Michelle Obama was so conspicuous when she said that was the first time I was proud of my country.
Yes. Harvard trained, privileged. Privilege. It's funny. I remember, and again, and we do have to wrap it up, but I remember, I remember when my two oldest were little when Barack Obama won, and I remember the next day talking to them, and they were like worried that a Democrat had won. Oh, Daddy, what's going to happen? But I said to them, to your point of hope, I was like, you know what? Let's see what happens. Right. We're not going to agree with everything. But it's a good thing that a black man is president of the United States. And I don't mean to sound stupid. And I remember early on his presidency, he was on one of the talk shows, the late night shows, and the host was saying to him, Patrick Riley writes about this in the Wall Street Journal today. The host said to him something like, "Oh, they're only against you because you're black." Right. And Obama, again, because he was charming. Yeah. Right?
No, absolutely.
Without missing a beat, he says, well, I was black before the election and they voted for me.
Yeah.
And that if that was his attitude going forward, he could have been Nixon going to China, so to speak.
Absolutely, 100%.
He succumbed to, and I think in some ways he succumbed to the blandishments. The hagiography that was created.
Oh my God, yes.
Right. And I just, very unfortunately, it was a time of deterioration. Everybody says it. You ask people, it's like, did you feel this way 25 years ago? Like, no.
Andrew, if I can quantum leap, I'm going to go back just before Obama went bad to help him to go right, then we could change America. Anyway,
there you go. You're leaving it. Nan Hayworth, listen, thank you so very. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You have one more thing to say. Go right ahead.
2 seconds. Michael Gonzalez, Heritage Foundation, Cuban immigrant, just American.
He's been on the show.
Yeah, but Jerry and I both had him on.
I love him. The Plot to Change America lays out chapter and verse of how we got to that point with Barack and Michelle. Because there had been this very steady, deliberate movement to capture and co-opt our educational institutions, our eleemosynary institutions, our government, and they succeeded. And now they're in the fruition phase.
Yep,
absolutely.
The woke, so-called woke capitalists.
We will. We got to get Michael on. Nan, thank you so very much for joining us. We'll put the link up on the page at Nan Hayworth on Twitter. Nan Hayworth, former member of Congress. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and best of luck.
Well, Jerry, that was fantastic. Love having Nan on. As you can tell, we can talk for a long time. But now, Jerry, it is time for the bottom line.
The bottom line.
So, yeah, we literally here's the funny thing, right? I've been wanting to have Nan on and have a long form conversation with her basically since she and I first talked.
Forever, sure. Yeah.
You know, and you get the sense as to why we're doing this, why these conversations are so important, because you can't get it in 8 or even 20 minutes chunks. But 50 minutes. What I appreciated, especially at that tail end, was this discussion of how we got to where we are. And
it goes to what you and I have talked about. I'm a little more curmudgeon about it, and that is the left has already won, you know, and that's why, again, bring our conversation full circle. That's why it's not enough to just let them keep on implanting false narratives. Well, for too long, we have been busy. Our side, we've been busy establishing businesses, putting up schools and establishing hospitals. That's what the conservatives or that's what the kind of the heirs to the founding fathers. We've been building things, and while we're building things, the left has taken over the university, Hollywood. They've taken over the public schools, and we have a fight in front of us. We can't be silent. We have.
It's funny, and I want to get to something in a second, but just to gin off of that, we said before Nan came on, the old adage that if you're explaining, you're losing, and I think there is the corollary to this, which is the opposite. If you're not explaining, they're winning.
Yeah.
And that there's something to be said for that. It's interesting you talk about this, and I'm cognizant of your time constraints here, Jerry, because years ago, I had a family member who was working for a university in the DC area, and this person was telling me about how there was a concerted effort to ensure that that there were no conservatives being admitted to these graduate programs. And as I was contemplating whether or not I was going to go to law school, for instance, that I should make sure that there was no reference to anything that smacked of being conservative on my resume, or to try to downplay it, because that would keep me out of law school. That was obviously at the time, especially very almost impossible to do, because I'd worked for a couple of different conservative organizations at the time. And it brings me to something that's happening right now, which is, and it's funny because it came up on Scotty's show yesterday a little bit before I came on, that the Federalist Society was created in response to the effort to get judges and conservative jurists out of the judiciary, right? This idea of having the judiciary lurch leftward. And now that the Federalist Society is actually making good on that promise, and there are more solid conservatives being appointed, now there is this more direct and very public attack on the Federalist Society. Neil Gorsuch spoke at the Federalist Society. That was a problem,
and not just on the Fed Society, but the left is attacking the courts the court system itself. I mean, just recently, a very prominent African American, a member of the Black Congressional Caucus, said that the Supreme Court is weaponized and illegitimate, and how dangerous that is. Here's the good news.
And the attack. Hold on, before you get to the good news, because the attack that is now expanded to the legacy of Justice Thomas. So there's this segment that was done yesterday on Scotty's show, because the Georgia legislature passed a resolution to put up a statue of Clarence Thomas, who's from Georgia. And the left is attacking him. The left is attacking his relationship with his wife. They're saying that Ginny Thomas is a lobbyist and a lobbyist for multiple organizations, which is nonsensical. And Ginny has long been a conservative activist, but the idea that this somehow influences Justice Thomas's philosophy or his decision-making is idiotic. Go ahead.
So again, just for clarity, so our audience knows. So the House Democratic Caucus chairman compares Supreme Court majority to the ghosts of the Confederacy. Yes. That's Congressman Hakeem Jeffries out of New York. And that's what they're doing now, because there are some conservatives in the court, in the judicial system. Now you have to rip down the judicial system. This is it. Look at what they're accusing the right of doing.
Yes.
And they're actually doing it, right?
There you go.
Delegitimizing elections, ripping down institutions, smashing norms. This is what the left is doing as they point the finger at us, saying, look what you're doing. This is what the January 6th committee is so dangerous.
Bringing it full circle.
But good news, right? Good news is that it's always been a remnant.
Yes.
Look, the bottom line is that they do control all these power centers, but it's always been true that a remnant is only a remnant is necessary to fight for freedom. Think about our Revolutionary War. It was a remnant. Most people were disengaged or they wanted to remain in the British Empire. It was a remnant who fought and declared independence. And the same is true. Look through our history, the abolitionist movement, a remnant, right? Yes. Look at the civil rights movement, a remnant. Look at those who got Ronald Reagan to the presidency. It was a remnant within the Republican Party, right? The majority of the party were anti-Reaganites. The point is that as long as there's a remnant, there's hope.
Yeah. So I was looking up. I put on my glasses because there was a paper, a conservative student newspaper at William and Mary in the 90s called The Remnant, founded on that very principle. So, listen. So really quick before you go, because I know you're time constrained. So we got this Fran Lebowitz, Martin Scorsese show. It's a film on what, Showtime?
It's on Netflix.
It's
on Netflix. I got to give a nod to my daughter, Bridget. She was home. Bridget and Claire were home. Oh, my anniversary was this week. So
happy anniversary. That's right. Happy anniversary.
Eric and I are married 29 years and the family put a nice big dinner on for us. Bridget and Claire. Bridget made a delicious dinner. Anyway, but Bridget said before she went back to Washington, D.C., she says, Daddy, you have to watch at least the first episode of this Pretend It's a City, Fran Lebowitz. And again, she's not my political cup of tea.
No,
but it's brilliant, wonderful, witty conversation.
Yes, and now I have to go watch Jack Reacher, which is
Reacher's a lot different. Reacher's just about
I understand this.
Justice by the fist.
Listen, I gotta say this. Watched The Eyes of Tammy Faye over the weekend. Enjoyed it. Jessica Chastain as Tammy Faye Baker. Congratulations to my Fieldston, not classmate, but alumnus, fellow Fieldston alumnus, Andy Weisblum, for being nominated for an Oscar for his editing of that film. Also, incidentally, Jerry, starring in a supporting acting role, a guy I did a play with, Gabriel Olds, playing Pat Robertson. So quite exciting there.
Well, I have to tell you something since you mentioned the Oscars.
Yes.
So a couple years ago, there is a Oscar nominee, an Academy Award nominee, best documentary in a short subject.
Yes.
It's called Audible.
Yes.
Jerry Rogers in the film, in the documentary.
Oh, hey, that's great.
Now, I'm pretty sure my scenes were cut, but essentially it's a documentary about the Maryland School for the Deaf, its football team.
There you go.
And they asked us, MSD asked us, the St. John's Catholic Prep football team, to come over and be the opposing team as they did these shots.
How'd you do, Jerry? How'd you do against the deaf team?
Well, it was all staged and it was all Hollywoody and that sort of thing. But St. John's Catholic Prep, Jerry Rogers, Daryl Hayes, we were there, and the movie that we helped create,
that's great,
is now nominated for an Oscar.
And that is fantastic.
It's a true story
for that. I know it's a true story. And also, congratulations to our friends at the Summer of Soul, which I interviewed those guys over the summer. A great documentary about the music festival, the Harlem Music Festival at Mount Morris Park. We may be back later on this week for an Andrew and Jerry Can't Wait.
Well, we're hoping to get, let's tease this just real quick. We're hoping to get a Guy Shepherd. Guy Shepherd is the originator, the founder of a site called Planned Man.
Yes.
Go check it out, plannedman.com. He has a brilliant piece on So Goes Joe Rogan, so goes everything.
So goes
And so we're going to have Guy Shepherd on and do a special Andrew and Jerry can't wait with Guy Shepherd.
Jerry, do you want people to dance around, or do you want them to plant their feet this week?
Plant your feet. Find the truth, though. Plant your feet. Stand firm.
Have a great
God bless
week,
you.
everybody. Have fun and stay safe.